You're in the water loop.
Water loop, water loop, water loop.
Welcome to Waterloop, the podcast exploring solutions for water sustainability. I'm the host, Travis Loop. This episode is part of the Color of Water series, co-hosted by Jose Aranda of the Water Hub. Communities across the Midwest are navigating a complex mix of water challenges, from affordability to agricultural pollution to protecting iconic national parks, and the policies shaping those outcomes. In this episode, Crystal Davis, Senior Midwest Regional Director for the National Parks Conservation Association, discusses how regional advocacy, coalition building, and community-driven organizing are advancing solutions across the region.
Water loop.
So welcome, Crystal. Thank you for joining us in this conversation. And just to get us started, we'd love to hear more about your background. What connected you to water? How did that happen for you?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm happy to be in community with you. I am a self-proclaimed indoor girl. And so while most people in this field kind of start out talking about their love of water and being on a lake and all of that stuff, that is not my story. I love being inside my house next to a beautiful fireplace and looking out the window at our beautiful outdoors and water and wildlife. And so I came to this work from uh, government relations, working around the state house, the Ohio State House, the Ohio House of Representatives, the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, Ohio Department of Natural Resources, worked a little bit in higher ed, and then came back to the environment, just understanding that the resource that we have at our fingertips and understanding that different communities have different relationships with that resource. And I love to explore that and uncomplicate environmentalism, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've got that national park. Let me say that. Well, you've got that National Park Conservation Association shirt on. I see the logo there. Well done. Tell people about that organization. Everybody's heard of the National Park Service. What does that organization do? How's it connected to NPS?
Yes. So the National Parks Conservation Association has been around since 1919. And we are a national environmental nonprofit organization that is essentially the voice of the national parks. We're not part of NPS, but we make it our mission and goal to advocate for the national parks. And we do that at all levels of government. And so we work with Friends of Parks groups to advocate and stand up parks and create new parks and make sure that we are protecting our cultural and historic resources. And so that is a little bit about what we do. We have 1.6 million members across the country.
And
So as a
national,
as an as an association, you can kind of do things that the federal agency can't do too, right? As far as advocacy and maybe fundraise and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So we can, go to Congress and advocate. We can be in coalitions and push legislation and things of that nature. So, and then we have, healthy philanthropic relationships to build, um, to raise funds to be able to help support the parks as well.
mm-hmm. It strikes me that, given your background, sorry, you actually are working on a critical part of supporting the conservation of water and nature overall, which is more on the admin side, the legal side, the advocacy side, the not so shiny part of this work. And a lot of that has to do with policies and partnerships and people, and but also jurisdictions. So can you tell us a little bit about your regional experience, your local experience, in your previous role and now in this role?
Absolutely. So I've been at NPCA for 1 year and 1 week so far. And prior to holding this position as the senior regional director here, I was with the Alliance for the Great Lakes, which is a regional organization based in Chicago with offices throughout the Great Lakes states, where I served as vice president of policy. And so I have experience working at the regional level, appreciate uh, being able to work with partners across the Great Lakes region to advocate for water issues.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting that that kind of regional focus. I wouldn't have expected, a National Park Conservation Association. I thought it'd be just kind of in DC, doing its work from there, taking that big, broad perspective. So what's that approach, and like why, how, kind of have these regional focuses?
Yeah, I really appreciate, I wasn't around when they started NPCA in 1919, but I appreciate that we are split up by our regions just because it gives us an opportunity to have some customization in our strategies to fit the places and the geographies where we are trying to work. And so I am in the Midwest, which is home to 11 states and 53 national parks and monuments, which are different than the other regions in different ways. And so I appreciate having the opportunity to work at the local level on some initiatives, go to state houses and advocate for pieces of legislation that support our national parks in some way or our waters, and then also go to Congress and have a huge delegation of folks from the Great Lakes or the Midwest region that we can advocate for to as well. I think this regional structure allows us to break up, divide, and conquer, and work collaboratively across the country on these issues.
Hmm. And let me ask you a couple of things. Um, One of them, as you were sharing, is I often hear that there's somewhat of a disconnect between people working on nature conservation and park conservation and people working on water access and water affordability. And the Great Lakes, is, we all know, in the Midwest, has very complex challenges. So how do you see this possibility of bridging water issues to conservation issues in the Midwest?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think that we have to acknowledge that we are not a monolith here in the Midwest or in the Great Lakes region. Every community is different and they have a different connection to water. I love advocating for water because water is one of those issues that's a unifier. If you tell me you care about education, I can tell you its connection to water. You tell me you care about kids, I can tell you about the connection to water. You tell me you care about health, I can tell you the connection to water because it is such a unifier and shouldn't be as politically partisan as some people try to make it out to be. So it's something that we can all work on. I appreciate a question because it acknowledges that um, every community has a different connection to water. So when I came into my last role at the Alliance for the Great Lakes, one of the questions I had was, how does the city of Cleveland, where I'm working, connect to water issues? So I had a series of community conversations and listened to residents firsthand tell me about their connection to water. And while there were people that said, yes, they care about boating and paddleboarding and fishing, there were a lot of people that said, my only connection to water or my major connection to water is that it's my source of tap. And so I can't afford it. And that's a priority for me. So I appreciated the ability to work on a myriad of issues, which allowed us to connect with the breadth and diversity of the people that were being impacted by that natural resource across the Great Lakes. And so I had the ability to work on everything from water affordability and addressing aging water infrastructure to addressing agricultural pollution and its impact to our waterways and aquatic invasive species and things of that nature. So I think that we have to be able to connect with everybody on this so we can build the people power to win.
Can you share a little bit more about like what kinds of people power partnerships or examples of this work between national organizations and frontline community organizations, some examples that have inspired you in the Midwest and in the Great Lakes?
Yeah, I think number one is just even more so important than it's ever been before, that we need to build people power, build coalitions, so that we can have shared messages and be able to implore our elected officials to introduce legislation that protects our natural resources. I say all the time when I go to Congress or I go to the State House, they see me coming and they say, Crystal's here to talk about parks and water. But when I bring somebody with me, a business person, they're like, what are they here for today? And I love it because I can look at them and say, I'm still here to talk about water and they care about it too. And so I think that's why we need these diverse coalitions of multi-sector, lots of different geographies, multiracial, um, intergenerational coalitions that come together to do this work. And so that's part of it. And
Yeah.
then you asked about examples. One of the examples I can talk about is the Healing Our Waters Coalition. I have the pleasure of serving as the fiscal co-chair and on the governance board for the Healing Our Waters Coalition, which is a water-focused coalition of over 180 water advocates that come together to advocate for water reforms, protection at the regional and national levels. And I've seen us, you know, be able to go to Congress, work together to send messages to legislators, to continue to get support for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and then to even embed some equity principles into that piece of legislation. So that is the collective impact of all of us working together.
Well, you mentioned, a year and 1 week that you've kind of been in this spot, and you talked a lot about advocacy. Could you kind of expand or go into more detail on some of those advocacy efforts, at state level, at federal level, what you're really asking policymakers, elected officials to do? What are some of the big things you all are seeking these days?
Yeah, I mean, and the major thing is that we need help at all levels of government. I think that right now, as we are coming off of the national election, the natural tendency is to look at everything happening on the federal level and say we need to double down in DC. And I don't think that's wrong, but I think that we can't forget that we have state houses and county councils and city councils where we need to advocate and pass legislation that's going to impact us as well. And so I think that that is just an imperative.
Yeah, I really
But
love that
you
point.
asked about legislation, so I wanted to make sure I talk
Oh, yeah.
about that.
Go ahead.
In terms of legislation, there's a lot of different things that we're asking for. Number one with NPCA is always going to be park funding. Um, we know that a lot of our national parks and park sites are chronically underfunded, which prevents them from being able to hire the appropriate staff to do the quality work that we know we need done. And so, advocating for park funding is something super important. Getting Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, getting that initiative passed again and reauthorized is something of the utmost importance just so we can protect our waterways and the lands adjacent to them. There's a number of pieces of legislation at the state levels that we can work on. I know in the Midwest, another growing issue is agricultural pollution. We know it accounts for over 80% of the um, contamination and the pollution that we're seeing in lakes like Lake Erie. And so advocating for reform at the state level, additional accountability, targeted funding is something that's also super important.
One of the things, especially the past 5 years, since I think environmental justice came even more to the forefront in this country, is something I've seen a lot is environmental justice and equity when it comes to access to nature, the experiences in nature, including national parks. So I'm wondering if that's something that's on your radar in your work, or or if you kind of have a perspective on where that all stands at this moment.
Who at this moment is
Well, yeah,
um
this is a tough moment.
it is a tough moment. I'll say I think that it is one of those things, access and equity to our greatest natural resource is something that you don't think about unless you've had it and it was taken away. Um, it's something that I don't think we all understand or appreciate that it is not shared equitably. This resource is not shared equitably, that all communities don't have equal access to this resource. And I think that's
Mhm.
important to note. And so, large part of my work in the past decade has been making sure that the voices that have historically been left out of water policy conversations are now amplified and integrated. It's not enough to have a community listening session. It's also incumbent upon us to act on what we've heard. And so those are things that I think are just super important things that we need to prioritize. You talked a little bit about this moment. This moment, you can't turn on the TV or read an email without hearing about the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion across our federal government and different agencies. And so I think that that is a charge to our environmental nonprofit organizations to say, you know, now the question is on us. Are we going to continue to prioritize it even when it's not a priority for our federal government? And for NPCA, the answer is absolutely. For the Midwest, the answer is absolutely. It is of paramount importance that we collaborate and advance collaboration with our tribal communities in the Midwest, that we walk alongside and work to amplify the voices of our frontline partners that are doing the work every day, that are the people that are the neighborhood navigators, is what I call them. Because when federal government has a pot of money or policy initiatives that they want to eventually get to communities, it's not just the local government's job to get those things out to the community. The people in most communities that are most connected are those neighborhood organizations, frontline partners, local activists that need to be engaged along the way. And so that's still a priority in my work.
I hear like the one big point that if the federal government is going to be turned away from these types of initiatives and focus, there's a lot of opportunity for organizations and others to step in and continue and step up, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the thing to remember is that we don't have the luxury of changing our complete mission every time there's a new administration at any level of
Mm.
government. I
Mhm.
think that the number was something like 19 administrations or nine, I forgot how many 19 administrations that NPCA has existed through. And so at the end of the day, we have to be steadfast on the things that are a priority for our organization and the people and communities that depend on us to advocate for these national parks and our lands and our water and air quality and environmental protections that we hold dear.
I have one more question. As you have been, you know, immersed and exposed and really just like passionate about coalition building and having, you know, uncommon partners get closer together and work together, and of course frontline partners and tribal partners. what what have you learned is a good recipe for coalition building? What ingredients need to be there for, you know, trust to come to fruition and flourish?
Yeah. I appreciate that question. It's something I've thought long and hard about, which is why I did the community conversations when I first started at the Alliance for the Great Lakes. I think that we have a lot of misconceptions about what community wants, who they are, what their priorities are, and you don't know what they care about until you shut up and listen. And so that is the name of the report that I wrote at the Alliance for the Great Lakes, which is Shut Up and Listen, Step One. And so we listen to communities, and it's super important. I think in terms of coalition building, um, I've worked at the last couple of jobs that I had on just building principles for how we intend to collaborate with BIPOC communities. We need to hold ourselves accountable, making sure that the relationships are multi beneficial and sustainable. We don't want to be extractive in these communities. We want to make sure that we're working collaboratively and that everybody comes out of these meetings feeling like this was a worthwhile partnership. I think that um, there has to be a level of intentionality behind making sure that voices are not tokenized, that we are centering lived experiences, and that we are engaging people from the ideation stage of policymaking all the way through to implementation. I think the tendency in environmentalism has been to take the shortcut, which has been to do something and then engage the community at the tail end and say, hey, do you have any feedback for us? And at that point, it's a box
Mhm.
checking situation because you're at the end of the project anyway. That is not authentic engagement. And so engaging people equitably and funding their participation to be at these tables and paying for that brain power is what equity looks like in real time.
I've got two last questions. One is, I know you're involved with the Healing Our Waters group, and I was hoping you could kind of just give a shout out and explain what that organization does up there in that part of the country.
Yeah, shout out to Healing Our Waters, Great Lakes Coalition. Um, just a robust coalition. Like I said before, over 180 groups unified to advocate with shared messages and strategy on our water issues at the regional and national levels. Um, we do everything from an annual conference that we have in October to in March, we have Great Lakes Days on Capitol Hill, where a number of us come to DC. We have a day of meetings with each other to kind of get our strategies together and our messages together. And then we break into state specific groups or cohorts to go meet with our congressional delegation to share those messages. So I really appreciate the power and the passion of this group. It's a one of the groups that I'm most proud of in terms of my engagement with them. There have been groups and coalitions that have an equity committee that is somewhat ceremonial. That is not the case with Healing Our Waters. We have an equity advisory and action group that I've been a part of since its inception that weighs in on our policy strategies and our strategic plan and helps guide our work alongside the governance board. So I'm happy to be a part of that coalition.
Yeah, 180 members. That is a strong group. That is bringing some force for sure. Okay, so my last question, you started out this conversation talking about how you're an indoors girl, right? But you
Yeah.
are with the national park, this association. Sorry. You started out the conversation talking about being an indoors girl, but you're there in that Midwest region. You said 53 national parks. Which one is your favorite and why? So I'm gonna take you outdoors for the end here.
That's like picking your favorite kid. Nobody has a favorite kid.
All right,
I
well,
think
I'll let you name more than one then, but you can't name all 53.
no, I cannot. I cannot. Not yet. Um, I am in closest proximity to Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I am partial because it's right in my backyard here in Cleveland, and I grew up in Akron, Ohio. And so Cuyahoga Valley National Park is right in between Akron and Cleveland and has such a rich legacy with its proximity to Cleveland and the the Stokes brothers and arguably one of the birthplaces of the environmental justice movement as we know it today. So I'm excited about CVNP. I'll say that I have a daughter and a son. My son is 7, my daughter is 10, and she's in 4th grade, which is significant if you were in the parks world because 4th grade is that magic year where you get in all the national parks for free. So I
Mm.
am excited about going across the Midwest to visit a lot of our national parks this year. We're charting our trip, but we know we want to get to Sleeping Bear Dunes in Michigan. We want to get to the Badlands in South Dakota. We want to see Mount Rushmore, of course, and a lot of the iconic parks that exist across the Midwest. And then also some of the urban parks like Pullman National Park, Chicago's only national park. And so I want to make sure that the kids get to see all of those spaces this year too.
Mm, that's awesome. I could have said earlier, I'm like a national park junkie. I'm such a big fan. I've got my annual pass in my wallet. Every one I've been to, I keep that map, with the black border and the name of the park. I've got like a stack of those from my life. But yeah, thanks for everything you do, Crystal, to help with conservation and access and our environment and people.
Thank you. Thanks for amplifying our work. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Crystal. Um,
You're in the water loop.